Hi. Good morning. I'm writing this on my phone, so please have patience with any grammatical or formatting errors. The post got removed originally, and I messaged the mods. They said they have no idea how it happened. But I've been finding small silhouettes of Mickey Mouse outside of my house. Okay, so here's the repost, and an update is in the works. To start off with, I now reside in a completely different state after leaving my job with the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. I used to be what one other Redditor described as a suit. I'm one of the guys that walks around the park in plain sight, yet is hidden to the public. I'm part of the elite group of black polo sporting undercover security officers that specialize in worse things than shoplifters and unruly park guests. You see, as stated prior to this post on No Sleep, if you're at Disney World and you see more than a few guys in one place wearing black polos, then you are most likely in danger, and you should leave the area immediately. The sad part is, we are so good at blending in with the woodwork that you wouldn't even notice us. Okay, let me just cut to the chase here. I've seen some pretty weird things at Disney World during my time. These anomalies that everyone speaks of, and, well, they're true. But that's the least of our concerns. See, the thing is, when you take hundreds of thousands of people and cram them into a relatively small space, weird shit is gonna happen. Okay, we've had kids, even adults, get lost in the park. Cryptozoological sightings, alien sightings, ghost sightings, and just generally unexplainable things happen all the time. So, I was a senior special security officer during the height of my time there, and got called for some pretty dark shit. Many of you think that we, as the security detail I was in, were covering up for Disney Corp. But in our true nature, we were damage control. And were kept out of the loop of things, and were trained not to question, but to diffuse. There was one thing, though, that to this day still bothers me. A cast member called us on the Nextel to report that a group of 4 children had gone missing on the land. Of course, I thought, another one of those anomalies. For those of you who don't know, the eerily calming nature ride called Living with the Land, it's located in the Land and the Sea Pavilion over by Soarin'. The odd thing about this report, though, is that we have never received one of these complaints before. And of course, we are issued cover-up stories to tell cast members or guests to calm them down. My colleague calmly came up with a story and explained that the kids were part of an educational program, and that they exited the boat with a guide and were escorted into the botany lab that exits on the ride. I told her not to ask any questions or talk about the incident, as not to spread false rumors, and had my colleague escort her to a nearby security office to have her sign some forms. My human nature took over, and I got curious, so I entered the ride on the next boat alone. Living with the Land is relatively boring, and not particularly popular, so, I can understand how the kids would be on the boat alone, and also how I could get on the boat by myself. I noticed absolutely nothing until I came to the part of the ride that has the prairie farmhouse. It looks like a faux house, but something about it just never sat right with me. As I have done hundreds of times before on rides, I jumped off the boat and onto the scene where the house is. I did notice something funny though. There were no pressure mats and the boat just went away, allotting about a good 30 seconds before the next boat got to the scene. I've never really seen a ride with no pressure mats to detect if anyone disembarks the ride, but anyway. So as a quick recap, kids disappear on the ride, I show up and feed the cast member who reported it some story about how they disembarked mid-ride and are on a tour of the lab and for her not to question it. A colleague of mine takes her away to debrief. I contacted the new cast member operating the ride and tell him to put some space between the next boat, as I am looking for a lost wedding ring. Bull, I know, but really, so what? I slowly started to walk up to the faux house, climbing the steps up to the porch, until I noticed a small emblem on the left window. It's a small square, and it has a compass symbol in it. Interesting that a Masonic symbol is hidden here. I figured that whoever built the ride was a Freemason and just brushed it off. I looked in the windows of the house, and it was more or less the same. Nothing but curtains with a black plywood behind them. I thought there was nothing to see here, but still something inside me decided that wasn't good enough. The front door glided open to a bright room with a black and white checkerboard floor. There was a marble altar on a table on the opposite end of the room with some kind of weird throne, like a chair built into the front of it, and a gold cup on the tabletop. The only other thing that was noticeable was a heavy wooden door on the other end of the room that was locked. There were no windows or anything else. I thought it was weird because I was always under the impression that this house was fake. Human nature again took over, and against my better judgment, I tried the door in the room. But I was relieved that it was locked. Tried all my keys, none of them worked. So, another thing too, at Disney we use a lock system called BEST. This had an interchangeable core that have assigned numbers and or letters. This is so we can issue keys only to certain areas. I have the General Master Key, which essentially is the real key to the kingdom. Interesting thing about this lock was that, well, my master didn't open it. I looked closer and, it was a BEST lock, but the inscription said CC on it, which I've never seen before. Since the door wasn't open, I decided to just leave. On my way out, I noticed in the floor that there was a fast pass printed out for Soren. Picked it up and pocketed it. It's amazing how trash works its way into odd places. But I'm gonna figure out where these kids went. I rode the boat back out to the platform and went back to Epcot's security office to play back some footage from the DVR. Took me a little while, but I zeroed in on the period where the kids entered the Land and Sea Pavilion and followed them. There were 4 kids total, 3 girls and 1 boy. The girls' actions were almost robotic, and sent a chill up my spine. They walked in a straight line through the pavilion, but what scared me was that there was a man with them, escorting them through the place. I paused and looked closer when I realized that the man was wearing a black polo and khakis. The same uniform I was wearing. And holy shit, I even recognized him. It was one of my colleagues. Alan is the guy that was at the scene before I got there. The same guy who fed the cast member at the control podium the bullshit about the kids going on a tour. I thought that maybe he did actually send them on the tour of the Botanic Lab and just lost track of them. Until I hit play on the film. The boy was not walking in line, and I could tell he was giving Alan problems. He keeps venturing away and getting distracted by various things in the pavilion. The benefit of the doubt I gave Alan subsided when I saw the kid go press the button for the fast pass on Soren and take the paper almost like a prize. Alan then tugged him away and stood back and observed as the kids walked to living with the land. I saw them get on the boat. I saw them through the storm scene, through the rainforest scene, through the desert scene. But after the desert, I lost the boat on camera. The ride stopped momentarily, but you could see it on the other scenes. And once it resumes, I saw the boat again in the scene with the pictures of farmers. The boat was empty. I also freaking saw Alan looking down off the observation deck, which explains how he responded so quickly. I switched the cameras back to live view and left that area. I haven't been exactly, honest with you thus far. I know a lot of things of what Disney does, and things that we respond to that a regular security officer wouldn't deal with. I've seen them experiment with so many things, such as eugenics, pharmaceutical engineering, even experimenting with gas. Have you ever noticed that on both Spaceship Earth and the monorail, that you get a strange calm feeling on those rides? Well, that's because they're pumping low doses of laughing gas in those areas. Ever heard of Room Zero? They were wearing gas masks for a reason. Ever hear of Gascots? Well, okay, that's not important right now. I would encourage you to research it if you don't know. I never thought that what we did was okay by containing these dark secrets, but it paid well. Alright, I've seen them quickly inject some experimental drugs on guests and throw them back out there. Okay, our job was to monitor and contain them if things went haywire. Okay, I know that I'm the bad guy, but this wasn't normal. Alright, this wasn't procedural. First thing I did was go over to the room where we keep the keys. I looked through the logbooks for the core labeled CC. I found it, but it had no zone or specific location issued to the core, and the number of copies was marked as 1. This key was in our system, but my master key didn't open it. I grabbed the core key and a few Zone 1 cores. The core key is a specific key that, when inserted into the lock, will remove the core so it can be replaced with another. I put this in my pocket and make a beeline for the Land and Sea Pavilion. I may be paranoid, but I swear I saw Alan following me in the shadows. I got to the ride and got to the house, and back in the front door to the Masonic room, and locked the front door as I entered. I inserted the core key into the lock on the wooden door, removed the core, and inserted the Zone 1 core into the lock. Now my master key will open the door. And boy, did it. The door glided open. It was heavy and steel on the other side of the wood face. There was a velvet red carpeted staircase leading down to some kind of utilidor. But, we're in Epcot. What the hell? There's one small utilidor in Epcot, but it doesn't go this deep. I descended the stairs and walked down the red carpeted hallway to these 2 double doors. And behind these doors was my answer and the truth as to what happened to these kids. Through these doors was the darkest side of Disney. A side of Disney that even I couldn't believe. Would Walt be in favor of this? Or is this one of Eisner's little idea of making more money off his guests? Behind these doors was an empty, dimly lit room with a small circular platform in the center. The carpet was the same lush red velvet carpet from the hallway. There were 6 leather armchairs around the circular platform, all with telephones and card readers on the table next to the chair. Inside, I knew what was going on. I knew what was happening here. This is one thing I will not cover up for the Disney court. I stood there in disbelief and horror and noticed a small door towards the back of the room. I went over and popped out the CC core, put it in my pocket, and put in a Zone 1 core. I heard someone clear their throat from in front of the room. It was Alan. He had an annoyed look on his face and held a gun trained at me. I slowly propped the door open on the latch and turned to face him. "You never should have come here," he said to me while stepping towards me. So, this is what you and your scumbag friends resorted to. I mean, we did some pretty fucked up shit, Alan. But this is a new low for you and your disgusting friends. I had my hand at my side and blocked the view of me slipping the Zone 1 core out of the handle and into my pocket. It's not gonna matter, because no one is going to find out. He raised the gun, and like something out of an action movie, I ripped the door open as he pulled the trigger as a bullet hit the door. I jumped backwards through the doorway and shut it behind me. That asshole was stuck because I had both cores in my pocket, so there was no way he could open the door now. He started shooting the door, and I moved forward. I walked down a hallway with these small cell-like rooms lining the hall, and inside were those play school chairs and a few toys. I checked every one of them. Thankfully, they were all empty. I got to the end of the hall, and there was this huge metal vault-like door. I popped the last Zone 1 core into the door to replace the CC core, and pulled the steel door open to be hit in the face with sunlight. I was outside on some side utility road off premises of Epcot. The road led away. It was too late. They were already gone for good, probably. I tried calling the police, but they never came. I called the FBI, but they never took me seriously. Hell, I even called the CIA, but they said that they didn't deal with domestic issues like that, and they referred me back to the FBI. I showed up at the Orange County Police Department headquarters, and they took a report, but I heard something fall in the trash when I was leaving. Okay, Disney is good at what they do. They are good at keeping secrets. No, they're not good. They're fantastic at it. But they're especially good at controlling any outside force that attempts to bring their stories to light. I'm lucky I saw the sunlight again. Okay? And I'm lucky to have had time to leave the state before they got to me. If you go there, please keep your kids close. Watch out for the guys in the black polos. They may be monitoring you. They may be responding to something that will put you in danger. You know, as far as I know, they aren't the ones that pick out the merchandise. I don't even know who does that. The pictures of the house I've found on the web can be accessed here. The second story of the house is seemingly normal, but I don't know how they access it. You'll also notice that there is an observation deck. This area was undergoing maintenance at the time, quote unquote. It was closed off to guests, but CCTV footage revealed nothing was happening in that area. The camera points back onto the observation area and not at the house. There are no cameras in that portion of the ride.